Thank you all for joining. So this is a session on enforcing organization policies with enterprise contracts. You're probably at the right place. The other session is, I don't know. So yeah, that's the joke of the day. My name is Zoran Regvart, and my team has been working on policy enforcement for Red Hat software delivery. So as you know, Red Hat delivers a bunch of open source, and the delivery pipeline was always open source. We are now on a new generation of our delivery pipeline, and it involves a bunch of the stuff you already heard today and are about to hear from today. So I'm here to showcase our approach and the tools we built. And I'd like this to be a discussion more than a sermon. So if you have any questions, jump in at any time or grab me in the hallway or something. So yeah, the QR code should take you to the slides, but you can also go from the schedule to the slides as well. So a bit of groundwork. When we talk about policies, there's a wide set of things that we can talk about. So here, by example, I'd like to talk about some policies that we implemented at Red Hat as means of showing you what we consider policies to be. So, for example, we check the image signature and provenance. So we want to make sure that the image, the artifact that we deliver, the container image, is from a known platform, built on a known platform. It wasn't tampered before we released it. And we want to make sure that certain steps happened on that pipeline, certain steps didn't pipeline, so we check the provenance of the build pipeline here. There are tools on the build pipeline, and we want to make sure that those tools are the vetted ones, so tools that we trust are to be run on the build pipeline. We also want to make sure that those tools are up to date. Tools themselves can have issues, so we check for up-to-dateness of tools. There's some dependency vetting, like there might be a dependency that a project depends on, and it has an incompatible license. So we want to eliminate those dependencies, or at least alert to them. So we run a bunch of different checks, and it's important for Red Hat that artifacts that we produce are consistent. So there are some conventions, there's some metadata associated with the artifacts. So this might be on images, something like labels. Like we want to make sure that image has a label that can be used in Red Hat Marketplace, so it shows up there correctly, so the customers know, what they're getting. This might be descriptors that are stored within the image, again tied to some marketplace or similar, or on opposite you have this dependency graph of images and products that needs to be adhered to if you want to upgrade from a version to version. This kind of metadata, we all need to check that to see that. So all consistent within the right check that. So the policy tool that we built works off of the build pipeline, the data recorded there, the provenance recorded there, and some data also gathered around the artifact, like the SBOM that is generated there. So this is all attached to the image that you want to.
I have a question here. Where do you enable these policies?
So the policies are part of the release pipeline. There are several pipelines all the way to something to being released to the public. The build pipeline is something that a developer most likely interacts the most with. And then after that build pipeline, there's a special pipeline that vets things, enforces the policies, and then gives you a gate, go or no go to publish something. As we've implemented, the enterprise contract, the tool that I'm talking about, also runs in after following the regular build. So you might get a report on your pull request, for example. Here's the thing that you introduced, and this can't happen, so you need to go in and check it. Yeah. So we had this need to automate these checks. So we wanted to have the ability to add new rules, to modify existing rules, have everyone in the whole process involved. So like product owners, product security folk, release engineers, developers, we wanted them all to kind of collaborate and contribute to this management, to the management of the policies themselves. We wanted this to be a transparent process. So often you see these release gates that are like encountered, I need to release this week, and I'm seeing this red light here, and I don't know even how to influence that red light here. So we wanted this to be like a transparent process that everyone can see and contribute to. So we focused a lot on what the tool provides you as an output. So the output is complete. So we didn't want to have a tool that like falls on the first step that it finds and that it's wrong with an artifact that you're trying to produce. We want to have a complete list of things that you need to fix, offer some suggestions, offer nice descriptions, things like that. So this is something that you can take on if you're a developer and then apply fixes based on that. We call it enterprise contract. It's probably not the best name. So yeah, but internally we just call it EC. So that's easier to roll off the tongue. So we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So every open source project in a way does. So to build, generate provenance, enforce these policies, use a bunch of open source tools and libraries. Our build pipelines run Tekton pipelines and Tekton chains. So this gives us, the build pipeline, obviously, and the attestations of the build. It also gives us the signature of the images, the signatures of the attestations. There are two side projects here, OpenShift pipelines and pipelines as code. These are just open source projects that we also use. This allows us to have the pipeline definitions in the code, in the repository, so the developers can customize them as needed. We definitely use Sigstore, so that's, I think, quite common to use these days. We all want to standardize on Sigstore. So for image signature, for identity checks, we use cosign as a library, not as a command line. And yeah, we use Open Policy Agent to implement the rules. So is anyone familiar with Open Policy Agent or Rego? Yeah, awesome, cool, some people have. So it's like a venerable open source project. It's commonly used as a admission controller or similar like decision point when you pull in images to a cluster, and then, tells you go, no go things. We use it as a library. It can be embedded as an engine. We use it as that. And we built a bunch of policy rules implemented in Rego. Okay, so enough slides. Let's go to the demos. Right, so is that big enough? Should I make it bigger? Is that better? Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna run EC validate image. That's the command line that we use. I'm going to pass in the image reference of an image that I want to test. I'm going to pass in the public key, and we're not using the transparency log here, so I'm passing in ignore recur. So Wi-Fi and everything going to impact this. So this is what you might see when you run this. There are a couple of things that are interesting here. So there are no violations, so 0 violations, 0 warnings. There are 6 successes. We didn't list them here. I'll have an example where we list the successes. But another interesting thing is this image in itself is an image index. So it actually points to 2 different images, one for each platform. So there's an ARM image and an AMD 64 image in here that we expanded, and we told the user there are 2 components here that we actually checked. The public key is, yeah, very expectedly the public key. This is very similar if I run cosign. So you can see that attached to these images, there's an attestation and the signature. So this is cosign 3. Very similarly, I could do this with cosign verify, right? So this is a similar command using cosign verify. So this is an output from cosign verify. The additional thing that EC does is also verifies the attestation. So if you're using the cosign CLI, this would be 2-step process. I just cut the attestation. So this is the part of the in-toto attestation here. I just cut it so it doesn't fill up the screen. So cosign claims are these the ones that were validated. This is an contains a valid salsa provenance attestation in an in-toto envelope, and the signature of it was checked. So this is what EC does if you just run it like that. Oh, cool. So you can also run EC by providing it as an application snapshot, we call it. So a list of components you want to check. So you might release several artifacts at once as a part of a product. So an application snapshot is a list of these. So there's another thing here that you can provide additional metadata, like we have source here. So this is for EC, the expected source that you want to build. So let me just see. I lost focus here for a second. Yeah. So that'll come and play here. So this is probably quite low for folk that are further out. So I'm saying EC validate image. I'm passing in this snapshot JSON, so the list of the components. And I'm also passing in now the policy that I want to check against. So this is referencing a GitHub repository where I have the policy configuration stored, also the public key. And now I'm showing additional info, and I want to show the successes. So again, Wi-Fi and friends, the joys of running a live demo. Oh yeah, I see what happened there. The revision didn't fill in, so this will generate a violation now. So you'll actually see a violation now. This was supposed to be a demo when the EC checks conclude successfully, and then another piece of the demo is when I actually provide a different URL and a different revision here, so you see a failure. So let me scroll here. Further at the top. Yeah, so this is our salsa check for correlated source code reference. So it says basically the expected source code reference is not the one that was attested. So, you know, if you noticed here, I had the revision just an empty string. This image wasn't built from that empty string. So yeah, this is an error so I'll just skip through this. Okay, yeah, so I'll show how we have the policy now. So this is our policy configuration. It has some metadata. A policy comprises of a number of sources, we call this, right? So terminology again. There's a policy source and a data source. The policy source points to Rego files, data source points to various sources of data. We're importing our library that makes things easier to write Rego, and we're importing a set of release policies, we call them. So part of our checks is that making sure that the allowed tools are run on the pipeline and not disallowed tools. So there's this acceptable bundles list that we have. So it's a list of tools as image bundles that you are allowed to run on a pipeline, and also has this notion of history. So we know how recent was a tool that was run on the pipeline, so we can say, you know, you need to run a newer tool if you're using an outdated version. There's some configuration. This is specifically Red Hat's configuration for the build pipeline. Everything is open source with Red Hat, so even our release configuration here. You can have this config section, and the config section can have includes and excludes. So with @ symbol, so it says @salsa3 here, we're including a collection of rules. We call this a collection. So it's a grouping of rules. And we're saying include all the rules that are salsa3. So you see a bunch of these here, all salsa related. So I'm going to just jump through this. We've seen this. Yeah. Control C this. Yeah. So this it'll probably fail because I Control C the other one. The other thing that you can do, it has various outputs that you can do. So one of the outputs is write down the attestation that you checked. So in the previous command line, the attestation was saved to the attestation JSON. I don't think obviously. Oh yeah, I have a cached version, I guess. So if I look at the attestation, I can see, so this is the expected, this was the source reference that the image was built from. So this repository and that revision, you know, the configuration I had up in the snapshot. I can just quickly, if I find my mouse, show how we implemented Rego. So I don't expect you to read through all this, but there's some custom metadata. This is the Rego language. I'll have an example of how to write a Rego rule in the next demo. Right, so this is a GitHub repository with our policies, implementations. Let's go back to the slides or let's go back to the demo. So for demo 3, I can show you how you can create your own custom policy. So this is a policy configuration. I can put the public key right in the policy configuration. Again, for sources, I'm saying load the rules that are here in this directory, and you can have embedded data, same as you can reference data from image repositories, GitHub, or HTTP endpoints. So I'm saying, like, a similar check would be check that the image that was built is from this GitHub organization. So that's the idea that I have here. So this is a Rego file. So this is the programming language that Open Policy Agent is working with. So again, in comments, some metadata. The rule is called deny. So it's a deny rule. It will show up as a violation. And the definition, the syntax is that it contains a result if. So as long as the statements following here in this body of the rule are true, the execution continues and produces a result. If it doesn't produce a result, then no violation will be reported. So I'm just constructing here a string. So I'm saying it needs to be git plus https github.com and then an allowed origin, right? You find the attestations provided in input.attestations. So some attestation in input.attestations just looks over all the attestations. We collect, so this is similar to like a Python comprehension, if you know Python. So we collect all the materials that have the URI that starts with that git plus and expected. And if we didn't find any, this would proceed. So if we didn't collect any materials that were from an expected origin, we continue here and we produce this result. If it did find at least one, then it would stop here. So the result wouldn't be produced, no violation would be produced. Yeah, so if I run this against the same image, but providing the policy that I have here on the file system with our custom rule that we built, this should, produce success, right? So I have a bunch of built-in checks here, and this is our custom rule policy implementation here. I can again modify this. So my policy now says, this is further down, so for folk in the back, this says Acme org instead of enterprise contract. And if I again run this, I'm expecting this to fail. So I'm using again the same policy, but with modified rule data. So now I'm expecting a different GitHub organization to be the source of this. And yeah.
Is it only for the container images, or also we can do it for vulnerability scanning?
So the way it works right now, it expects that you've attached the vulnerability report to your image. So you pull that in. It doesn't run a scanner on as part of a use. Yeah, these are the demos. Quickly to wrap things up because I'm running tight out of time. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you. Help us. There's a call to action. Enterprise contract is not the name that's gonna, be written down in history as the greatest name of all times. So we have this issue in our community repository. If you have a suggestion, please chime in there. And yeah, come talk to us. We have bi-weekly community calls that you can join, but we're super open to any kinds of collaboration. So we have a Slack listed here instance that you can jump in.
And I have 1 minute for questions, but I'll be also available outside. Go ahead.
How do you map how do you find out or control what the right policy is to apply to any particular software package or release?
Right. So at Red Hat, there's in the release pipeline, we map the products to a default policy. If your product deviates for some reason, there are some products that can deviate, then you can map to different policies. There are just a couple of standardized policies. Each product can also create a custom policy. This needs to be approved by the release engineering team. And within that policy, you can say, I'm just excluding this rule because I'm on a tight deadline and I need to push this through. So part of the configuration is what we call a volatile config. So you can say, by this date, I want to have this exclusion. So I'm going to tackle this within a month, but just let me release now. Yeah, thank you. Grab me in the hallway if you have any further questions.